All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the SDR Hotline. This month specifically is the theme of Sales Blacker. So I have a series of guests today, Chantel George, to talk about a bunch of things, right? I would imagine being a Black woman in sales, talking about Sistas in Sales specifically, even talking about the experience of how we grow up and how often business is incorporated into the conversations that we're having, whether that be with our fam, our friends, over the dinner table, whatever else it is. So, Chantel, super excited that you're here. Welcome to the SDR Hotline.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to talk with you today. And yeah, when we were talking before today, we just got so energized about this conversation, and I'm just happy to share and tell everyone my story and kind of some of the revelations we discussed.
Yes, 100%. So how about yeah, we start with this. You talked about like sharing your story. Maybe a quick introduction for those who might not know like who you are, what you represent.
Sure. So I'm Chantel George. I am the founder and CEO of Sistas In Sales, which is a global organization for women of color in sales. And I have been running the organization for 4 years, and it has been a passion. It has been an inspiration. It has been the reason why I wake up and why I do what I do. And I cannot explain how much gratification I get and my team gets from introducing Black into this world. So I'm thrilled to be here. I spoke to Gabby about this before, but ultimately, a lot of my reason to do this was because as I started navigating sales myself, I realized that there were no mentors or guidance for me past a certain point. However, I knew that CEOs and VPs and directors of sales enjoying flourishing careers. So there was a disconnect between I was and where I knew and so I started SIS to introduce mentors to me, to attract mentors to help me. And through that vehicle, I've been able to establish a system so that other women of color in sales can have mentorship, can have guidance, can have a network, can feel secure in this industry. And so I'm happy to be here to talk more about that.
Awesome. I'm just over here taking notes, and I'm gonna give a quick little shout out to Tequila. She's awesome. She's from Flock J. Hey, Tequila, what's going on? I think there's something you mentioned here because we could probably have a whole hour-long conversation around mentorship and sponsorship. And there was something that we had talked about when we did our prep call earlier this week, even around like what are like the unique challenges that like Black women specifically or women of color are going to experience or face as they're stepping into a sales role, and even like what kind of expectations. Like it's not like how to manage my own expectations when I'm stepping into these organizations, maybe knowing that I might not have the exact same experience or the same exposure or the same role models that my peers might have.
Yeah, that's a great question. We did talk a lot about this in the sense of how much life has prepared you for the moment before you start working at a sales organization first time. And we all have different varying paths when it comes to that. I think ultimately, before I go into that part of it, like life and cultural norms and family background are an important topic. I want to talk about, let's just imagine that it's, we're all here, it's day one, and taking out of the pieces, leaving to the side for a second. Finding mentorship is important. I think being flexible about that mentorship is important. So I am not this conversation in the work that we're doing and, with everything that's gone on to oppress Black that the state of the world will change because it's a gradual process. So in one mentor, with having a flexible approach to different types of mentors. So I think it's important to have a mentor at the C-level, a mentor at an executive level, who you can see their career, see how they've gotten there over the course of maybe 20, 30 years, and have conversations with them. I also think it's important to have someone who you really like and who works really hard on your team, like at a peer level, that you can talk to about, go over tactical things, ensure that, you guys are working together and have similar benchmarks. And then I think it's important to have someone who's not in your company at all aspire to work towards, and who you aspire to embody, that you can talk politics, office politics, what's best to do here, how do I negotiate here? And that gives you some comfort, I believe, because that person isn't connected to your day to day. And being okay with those people being from all different races and shapes and sizes, and
Yeah.
and that's fine. And I know that might sound radical coming from someone who created a community for Black and brown sales, but while we're working to figure this out together, we need to allow people to help us get to where we need to be. And I think the important point of this.
Yeah, I love this. There. I'm gonna go all over the place. Just heads up.
It's okay.
Okay,
Right.
perfect. Listen, I've embraced it for myself, but because there's like one of the conversations that I've been having, like, I mean, not in the SDR hotline specifically, but I run a clubhouse room alongside a woman named Alexine Moudoir called Women in Sales. And so we've been talking a lot about mentorship and sponsorship. Had Roderick Jefferson on a couple of weeks ago, and he had talked about mentorship and sponsorship and the difference between that. But one of the things that I'm hearing, especially from women, and I think about my own experience of like allowing people to help me. I always like grew up with that mentality of like, I have to work 2-3 times harder. Like I have to figure things out myself. So I couldn't even imagine there being some challenges in like some internal challenges with saying, hey, listen, I do need help. I do need to reach out, and I do need to seek mentorship. But like, what were the things that helped you like realize even and allowed you to go out and seek mentorship and all the different forms that it could be in?
Okay. So now that goes back to what we were saying we're going to put to the side in the first question you asked me. So there are cultural norms and familial nuances you when you come to work day one that can also help highlight gaps in your knowledge. My dad, when I was born, he had already retired, and he was an entrepreneur at the time, looking for ideas and into. So I watched him kind of build himself up from scratch, create a name for himself, go out and find business, maintain that business. And so what was transferred to me was like a go-to, getting things done no matter what. And so that made me, I think, good at the job. Now, there are some other folks. So for example, I was a sales manager at one point, and I had someone on my team who showed up just like day one, ready to close business, not taking for an answer. Wonderful. So we share the same vibe in that sense. But the other layer was he knew how to negotiate for a raise. He knew how to have constructive one-on-one with me. He knew how to manage. And I was really surprised because my day one version of him would have been like that. I would have had the gumption, certainly not the corporate know-how. And so I thought, like, okay, so his mentorship journey will be completely different because he's got that corporate language, like we talked about, that business language.
Yes.
His father is, Dunkin' Donuts, guru and has scaled his business. So that means from the moment that he was born, he was listening to talks about profit and loss. He was looking at earnings reports. He was hearing all of this jargon in and out of his household. I wasn't listening to that. It's different. And so I think, first taking a gut check, realizing what was the environment you grew up in so that you know what gaps you need to fill. And, and being okay, like I mentioned, with finding, flexible mentors to help you fill those gaps. And not always are they connected, particular struggle. Sometimes it's just, like I mentioned before, tactical mentorship that you need to excel.
So this is a big part of a conversation that we had during our prep call, because I even thought about for myself, like I grew up, so like I was born 1990. My grandfather had launched his own entrepreneurial venture in 1992. So like I grew up seeing, like I feel like I grew up in an office. And the whole thing was, all right, hey, we're going to consult companies on how they can better manage their business, how they can scale out their business, how they can grow out their business. So like just by like being born into the family that I was born into and certain things that were happening, it was like, stepping into a sales position, I knew the language. I knew which resources to look out for. I knew where to go. I had gumption, and I had some degree of kind of corporate know-how, or at least enough to go figure things out a lot faster than the people around me. So that's definitely an advantage or a privilege that I got to benefit from. I'd be curious for folks who might not, because we touched on this, like for folks who don't have that, I guess, or haven't inherited that corporate know-how from potentially like their inner circles, their family, or right, the people they're in super close proximity to outside of work. What's that bridge? Like, what does that bridge look like to get them from, all right, hey, I have the gumption, to now I have gumption plus know-how?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. And I feel like, again, okay, I'll tell you another thing that helped me analyze my. So when I started SIS, I read a lot of books to familiarize myself with launching a business. And there was one book that really stuck out to me. And I've spoken about this before in other speaking engagements. I read a book Shark Tank produced, and which makes sense. They have a lot of business, have a lot of pitches. And one thing that really resonated with me, kind of going back to the analysis that we were speaking about before, is write a list of all the things you know that you need to launch your business. And then circle all of the items that you feel that you can feel like I can speak really confidently about the business. I could be a great brand advocate for myself. I can be a great salesperson. Then there are other pieces for the business. There's the finance for the business, operations for the business. And then what the book recommends is, okay, well, when you look at the things you can't do you need a partner, or can you teach yourself these things? And then you make another like motion by that, an asterisk or like a dash. And then I looked at the things that I could teach myself, and I looked at the things that I did know, and I looked at the small list of what I didn't know. It wasn't enough for me to get a partner at the time, but it was enough for me to analyze where I was at in my process. And I think when it's SDRs on the line, or all the aspiring SDRs or whatnot, that exercise of like, this is what I know I need to do to be successful. Here's a list of things that I know exist. Here are the things that I can do. Here are the things I need help with. That's the kind of checklist that you need, so that you can be intentional about mentorship, so you can be intentional about what you need to succeed, to get yourself to the next level, and also to have with yourself like, oh, why is it that I don't know about these things? And that goes back to what you were saying, Gabby, because some of us, didn't have some of these intrinsic qualities. We were raised in these, and so that's also something that you can reflect on. On the flip side, you might have unique qualities that you may not even have thought were assets to you. And so one thing that I never really thought about as an asset to myself was my family in general. So like my family is from the Caribbean. They immigrated to New York. They all stayed together, and they all helped one another. It was like finding a place to live or helping each other with jobs. I never really thought about how powerful that was until I went through a lot of self-reflection when building my business and being in sales. And so that's a really unique asset. Oh, I like to ask for help. I can ask for help. There might be people that, are not inclined to do that. But because I grew up in an environment where we're always asking each other for help, it's something that has also become second nature for me, and has been a part of what I would consider managing up, and not being afraid to say, I need help. I'm failing fast. So I think outside of the tactical things that we're speaking about, some of the qualitative things that you can reflect on, but ultimately a lot of this comes from just reflection.
Yes. Yeah, that's super powerful, because I learned the hard way that I needed to start asking for help more. And even thinking about like the format that we have the SDR hotline in right now, it really was inspired by a conversation I had with a woman named Ashley Zaxt about, hey, like advocating for yourself. So like when I think about like the vision that the SDR hotline is in service to, it really is a message about so when I say self-advocacy is like, hey, listen, I need help, or I need these things. Like, this is what I'm needing, and not being afraid to say like, I don't know how to do this by myself, or I don't know how to get these resources by myself, or I've never been in this situation before. So please like help me figure out how to navigate this situation. So I feel like it's just an incredibly important call out over and over again, because otherwise what are people going to do? like be at home behind their screen, like not fully bought in, not fully engaged, like feeling as though they're an imposter when it could be something as simple as like reaching out and asking for help. So thank you for the reminder on this one.
Yeah, and sometimes I really do think that if you were in an environment where it was kind of shunned or not seen as a sign of strength, it just might not be a part of your DNA. And I think it's up to a good manager to do the same exercise for their team. Who is asking for help and who's not? Why are these people asking for help more so than the others? What is it about their mission on sales or where they come from that might be leading them to feel like they have to be individual, approach this individualistically? So I think there's a lot to be said there.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just curious because, like, as I'm listening to you kind of share more about how you're like, all right, hey, I have a vision for myself. So, like, starting SIS, for example. And it's like, all right, I'm gonna read books. I'm gonna seek out content, or it kind of sounds like there's like a structure and there's a framework that you have for approaching certain situations. Is this something that like you just naturally like just have? It's intrinsic to who you are. Was this something that was developed? Like, how did you get to this point?
That's a great question. I would not say that it was something that showed up for me out of the blue. It was through a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
I really do reflect on what my business needs to thrive, and make a small plan to that and chip away at that. But ultimately, like the brass tacks, I have expanded my team. So we talk a lot about like diversity, inclusion, and so my team are all Black women, and
Yes.
I'm really thankful to be in a position that I can only have, not only, but that able to be a part of this. And my business grew the more I hired people to help me. Like if I'm in a vacuum by myself, trying to figure out the best way to approach situations, the best way to talk to a partner, not only would I not have any perspective because it would just be me having a conversation alone, I also wouldn't have the advantage of leveraging others' experiences. And so I think the answer to your question is hiring people. People come with backgrounds, they come with expertise, they come with ideas, hiring diverse thoughts, people who have diverse thoughts, hiring people that have diverse backgrounds. So like I'm the only one on my team that lives in New York. Another one on my team lives in DC, and another one lives in London. And we're literally in different places. I mean, yeah.
Hannah's dope. I love her.
And so everyone is a place physically. Everyone is in there. Exactly. Me too. So, that's ultimately how I've processed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is a little bit of like a sidestep away from the conversation that we'd be having thus far, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up since we talked about it quite a bit earlier in the week, is this idea around, or the importance of like career planning and like understanding our why and understanding what we're working towards and making sure that we have, I guess, always like that North Star. Would you care to kind of expound upon like your take on like why this is important, like how people can approach this and what it can do for them in their careers?
So that's a great question. I have a controversial answer to this.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
When I first did SIS, by the apologies if there's some buffering. I feel like there's some buffering going on my end, so apologies.
Yes, listen, we're rolling with it.
We're rolling with it. So if you had asked my North Star was when I first started my business, I would have told you 300 in my community. And that will, like, to me now, that seems ridiculous because we've just crossed 3,000. But that was the North Star then, and that's what I thought was the only success metric. I keep my North Star so flexible now because people and experiences and ideas come to me, and I feel like I need to stretch with them. So that's another way that the business and the organization scales. Someone might have a more audacious idea about your business than you. And so, it's okay to say, all right, you believe in this so much, even raise the bar that high, but I'm going to raise the bar now higher than that, because clearly there's value in the work that we're doing. And sometimes being so close to your organization, you might not even see it. You might not even be that audacious. You might just be in the minutia. You might just be thinking day to day, week to week. And then someone will say, I see this being the largest organization for business by something like that. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, I like that. Let's get fired up about that. And so staying open, staying willing to let other people's motivations, letting other people's aspirations for you, help you stay, keep your North Star flexible. I'll say, like, when I was account executive in one of the first companies I worked, I kept that same mindset because I had managers see something in me that I didn't see in myself at the time. Who they gave me a North Star that really did change everything about my career.
Ooh, I got the shiver me timbers on that one. Thank you for sharing that. Because there can be, I'm even thinking about like reflecting on the experiences that I'm seeing or observing with the reps on my team, or whether it's they're engaging, like they're collaborating together, so peer to peer. And what can happen is like someone brings up an idea, right? And collectively they come up with something more audacious, something bigger, something potentially even more effective. Or I think about a manager that I had when I first stepped into sales. It wasn't like career specific, right? Well, there's many opportunities where he could go, hey, try this thing that you would have never allowed yourself to do and see how well it will work for you. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, and he's like, just do it, just try it out. Or for someone to like plant that seed of, hey, there's something even bigger and brighter for you than you could have ever imagined for yourself, and here's how you can start setting yourself up for that. And I'm like, wait a minute, you mean you see a lot more in me than I could ever imagine, like seeing for myself? Wow, you're silly, but sure. So I think that's amazing. And even I don't think we like prep for this one, but some of the conversations I'm having with folks, especially those who are looking to break into tech sales, especially people of color, whether man, woman, and everything, right, is like I try and encourage them to like seek out environments and seek out like bosses in particular who are going to do that for them, right? Like to offer up a model of, hey, I have an even more audacious idea of what you can do than you could have even imagined. I'm like, if you can have that early on in your career, it can be so incredibly beneficial. Do you have any advice for folks who might be breaking into tech in terms of like, hey, like here's how to find like maybe a really solid, not just company, but really solid environment, or really like a supportive team or a boss who's going to push you and see more of you? Do you have any advice for people on like what they should be looking for or how they should approach the job search?
I have some advice for the company itself.
Okay.
Because
okay, cool.
ultimately, the way that you get not hiring managers, but sales managers to look at you and be inspired by you or provide some ideas about your career is by hiring people that have lived not a lot of life, but lived life, that have been in different situations, that are dynamic themselves. And like, it's hard to have a manager be creative about your career if they are not creative, and then they are not dynamic, and if they are very set in their ways. So hiring people that are flexible, that are willing to think outside of the box, is step. From there, you can kind of latch on at their vision and be bought into their vision. So I think, if you, going back to the D&I part of this conversation, if everyone is from the same background, has only seen the same things, I'm talking about managers, have only been in the same places, how can we expect them to think outside of the box for their reps? That the bar is already so low because they can only see what they know, experience that a lot. up until I
Yeah.
finally found, I remember my first, it was interesting because it's not even like the first boss that I had who challenged that wasn't necessarily a Black person or a person of color. It was just a white guy from California. At the time, all the managers I had were white men from New York. So it
Mhm.
was as simple as just someone being from a state that saw me
Yep.
differently, that, maybe in that state, they were around more diverse communities. Maybe in that state, I don't know what it might have been, but it was just that shift. And so, like, I think companies need to take a really, it's not just diverse teams performing better per Harvard Business Review. It's diverse teams providing inspiration to their reps because they have seen out in the world and have experienced a lot of, wonderful moments themselves. So I think hopefully that answers your question in a different way.
I'm loving the different, like, you're like, it's controversial. I'm like, great. So, because I mean, it's like, it's not my first time asking these questions, but it's always, I mean, it's what you share is incredibly refreshing, and it is a different point of view, a different perspective. I think is incredibly beautiful. Because, like, I get my advice to people, individuals, like, all right, hey, here are things that you can look for in a company. Here are things that you can look for in the leadership team. And if I'm thinking about, like, what are the specific actions that people can take, it's even looking at the leadership, like, what's their background? What does their resume look like? How many diverse experiences have they had in their career, or like working in different industries, or just working with different people altogether? Like, that can be one thing, but I also reflect on it as a leader, what you're sharing with me. It's not to say that I'm like the absolute best manager in the world, but one of the things that I feel like has really helped me out, especially in the past couple of years, is number one, like, there's been a whole flurry of things that have happened across my lifetime, but I recognize, I'm like, oh, one of the reasons why, or what might impact my ability to really connect with someone very deeply, and where they're like, hey, listen, I'm going to work really hard, I'm going to trust you, like, I'll offer up feedback, and they're willing to take it. A lot of that is because I do have, like, that experience, like, having lived in another country, spoke a different language, like, was a public policy major, worked in different industries, took time off, right? Like, and became a hippy dippy witch kind of person. So they're like, just like being able to be an incredibly, like, well-rounded, like, when I say cultured, or just incredibly open-minded person, how that can show up in the ways, how that can show up in leadership and what that can do for a team. I love it. So I know I went on a little bit of a rant there, but, like, it was just an
No,
amazing call out, and something I'm not going to take for granted anymore.
it's kind of like what we were talking about, right? Your day one can be it's outside of just like the tactical things, easy to pinpoint, can be something that's just intangible. Like, like you said, you didn't really reflect on how being worldly has made you, because it's something that unless you really sit back and go like, what are the things that make me me? Then then from there you'll be able to kind of assess the best way forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I also love how, like, it seems like you just reflect so much. Like, I was like, even for me, again, like, I feel like I've had to go through some hard times where, like, the world said you're in timeout and you need to sit down and think about what you're doing. So the ability just to, like, all right, I'm just going to decide to do this is
They're
so
like, you sit
powerful.
down with your.
Yeah, like,
I will not
it's
say
like the universe
that I am
mother.
like I am not waking up every day and meditating for 2 hours and reflecting on my life and where I'm going to go. That is not what is happening. I will say this: it's less about that. It's more about well, I'll tell you. You know, outside of like professional goals, life will make you reflect. And I think when you breathe
Mhm.
into those moments, it's kind of sometimes where you become wiser. So I talked about my dad being a really big part of my life. So when he passed away last year, I really sat and thought about what that meant for my identity. Does this
Mm.
mean now? And I think we all have moments that come, unexpectedly in our life. And I think, you know, like I mentioned, I'm not and doing 2 hours and sessions every day, but I am breathing into big life moments and reassessing and
Mhm.
not just moving forward forward, even though something has happened. Like when that did happen, I paused in almost every area of my life. And I really thought, what does this mean? Who am I now? What, where do I go from there? And maybe it's not as dire as losing a parent, but I'm sure we can pinpoint major things that's happened that force us to kind of sit with ourselves. And I remember early days in sales. I remember we would print an entire month on our desk as we would like make cold meetings, cold call and pitch. And I remember the entire month just kind of like being in one piece of paper, and sales really makes time go by fast. Sales makes time go by like a blink of the eye, and that's just not how other industries operate sometimes. So we're in a fast world. Our whole month is in one piece of paper, and I'm just planning out weeks and weeks and weeks in ahead. And so like, our industries force us to move ahead. And sometimes we do need to reflect and stop us. So when a major event stops us, we're like, whoa, I didn't realize how fast I was moving. So I think it's not just, being thoughtful all the time, letting yourself be thoughtful when a major event happens, even though you're in an industry where things move.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and sorry to hear about your dad as well. I said this earlier in the week. I'll say it here as well. It's let me find my words real quick. It is a super high speed industry. Like, yes, like things are moving so fast. Like we're always like racing off to the next thing, right? It's like, all right, cool. Like you almost have to have like the memory of like a goldfish, just keep on moving and keep on going. And I think about experiences that I've had. I didn't lose a parent, but I did have like a full on nervous breakdown. And like I was forced. So there's other things that were happening where I could not actually get a job, and I don't know that I actually wanted to at that time. But through that experience, I really did. I had to step back and be like, wow, like this thing happened, or there was a series of things that happened that led to this. Like, who am I now? Like, what does this mean for me? Like, and now that I know what I know, how's this going to inform or influence my actions and my decisions and my choices and the people that I'm around moving forward? And while it can be it was incredibly devastating to go through that. 3 years, like I'm 3 years removed from that experience, and I'm thankful for the learnings that I got. I'm thankful for the awareness and the kind of consciousness that was gifted to me from experiencing that and being really being forced to like sit down and chill out and cool off kind of thing. It's even something I try and it's not to say, oh, hey, go have a nervous breakdown, but it's like there's a mindfulness that I try and encourage the reps on my team to have as well. It's like, hey, like end of the day, like let's reflect real quickly. It was a crap day, fine. Like it was a crap day. That's cool. Sit with it. Right. And like, what can we do to better ourselves? Like, what can we do to set ourselves up to have a better day tomorrow? Right. Or, hey, every day we're going to do our absolute best. And we also recognize that our best is going to look different from one day to the next. Like one day's best can look like, all right, I got 10 meetings. I had so many calls. I was feeling good. The next day could look like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I didn't get a lot of sleep. And so today's an email and prospecting heavy day. So yeah, no, I think that's such a beautiful thing to remember. It's just like reflecting, taking those moments to sit down and be okay with whatever we're feeling and whatever we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you do that. I love that you like try and balance out the day or try and balance out the quarter or the month with like daily just breathing and thinking and reflecting. Because it's truly a fast-paced life, and you're really tied to, it's a timed job that whether it's, an annual quota, half-year quota, really whatnot, it's always not enough time to get it done. It's always racing against the clock to get it done. And, I think it's like that makes the job very exciting, very interesting, and something that I really do enjoy. It can absolutely just pile on you all at the same time. And sometimes it can be habitual too. Like when something went wrong, like I had to keep saying to myself, no, I need more time to process it. No, I need more time to get through this. No, I don't. It doesn't matter that the quarter ends in a month. It doesn't matter that the quarter ends in a couple weeks, because
Yeah.
me being whole and okay to move forward will actually make me more effective when I'm ready to go back. So, you know, you're doing such a great thing by
Ooh,
by having those check-ins.
I almost got happy. Okay. It almost happened. It almost happened.
That's funny.
Because no, there's a guy, Tom Alamo, Tommy Tahoe. He does the Millennial Sales Podcast. And so the episode that I was on aired on Wednesday. Subtle drop, whatever. It's my show. I do what I want. But what I had shared on the show, like what the thumbnail video thing was this. It's like your work will not get taken care of if you're not taken care of first. Like, again, that was a lesson that I learned the hard way. But even it's real out here. Like, we're in a pandemic. You're out in Texas. Like, I'm surprised that a light is on right now. What's going on? You know, like there's so many real things that are happening.
Light is on, you know, Wi-Fi is giving us issues. I mean, but we're here.
We're here. Yeah. And I'm grateful and I'm thankful for it. But yeah, but I think about and I feel like this is experience that maybe we both like we have this because we've been in well, I don't want to speak for you, but like I know for myself, I'm now in my 6th year of sales, of like working in this industry. But my first time when I was an SDR, I didn't take a day off that entire first year. I remember like one of my coworkers who's she was a few years older than I was. And so she was like, she'd like have a trip, like, you know, her girlfriends were getting married left and right. So she would be gone, like 3-4 days of the month. And I was like, how is she not freaking out? Like, I would get anxious thinking about the time that she was taking off. And so like, that's really how I lived for the first 3 years of my career, was just like always on, never a day off. Even when I took time off, I was working. And right, like, I mean, again, had an experience where I had to recognize like, this is actually not sustainable. Like, if I want the career, like I have really audacious goals for myself in terms of my career in sales. And I was like, I will never be able to get there if I don't actually start taking care of myself. Like, I was like, if I'm working all the time, I'm never going to have the fortitude to get to the places that I want to get to. So I didn't know we were going to get here in this conversation.
So neither did I. I will never forget when in my early days as well, we had the COO talk to us as like a budding sales team. And there was a whiteboard in the back, and he drew a line on the whiteboard, and he put, I think, like 40 or something at one end, something like that. And then he had on the beginning of the line, he had 2. He was like, most of you are here, like in the 2nd year of your job. Your career could span 40 years. And when you have a line and it's just like at the beginning is just like there, you think about the other 30 plus you have to be working or figuring out how to continue to support whatnot, unless you hit it, you know, big, which is of course absolutely possible, but just makes you take a step back and think about the longevity of your working life and how you like sustainability needs to be there for you throughout the entire journey, because it's a long one, beautiful one. And it, you know, maybe it's not all at the same time. Maybe there are breaks, maybe there are different ventures you do, but ultimately we're going to be doing this for quite some time, at least a couple decades. I think like we don't always have that view of it, you know, and I commend you for having those times to just reflect. But yeah, it's a long time we're going to be doing this. We need to practice mental health. We need to practice being able to take time, because it will be there waiting for us. This is sales. There will be someone there waiting to hear what we have to sell at some point, at any point. And if it's a product that's timeless, it'll be there in 10 years too. And that's
Yeah.
fine,
Yes, drop a word on somebody. No, there was an exercise that I did with I was sitting at home, I can like recall it, and I was kind of just thinking through, like I was thinking through taking time off. And at the time it seemed like a long time, but I was like, all right, what is like 3 months? I was like, in the grand scheme of things, I'm like, all right, let's say that, I was what, 27? Yeah, 27 at the time. I was like, I'll probably working until like 50, 60 years old. Like if I'm like, probably at least. So I was like, what is 3 months in the grand scheme of like 40 years? Like I was like, it's like
Exactly.
really like a fraction. It's like the math of it. And I was like, all right, literally this experience that I'm having right now represents like 2% of my entire career.
Yes.
Like as I'm like, what?
Yes.
Like I was like, oh, so I was like, does it make sense to expend so much like mental and emotional energy into 2%? And it's like, no. And I was like, okay, I can call I would go through these really logical exercises to help me settle down emotionally. I was like, all right, we're fine now. We can go on a walk. We can go outside now.
That's exactly that's what I'm saying. But you know what? This is a really interesting point, because like elementary school to maybe your first sales job, everything actually water. So like all of the big moments in your life, like high school's 4 years, college is 4 years if you go, it does feel very palpable and very manageable. Then when you're in the real world, it's the longest amount of time in a particular phase where you really aren't time you have to grow into yourself, because you had to do it so quickly and so fast. And every stage of your life prior to this was like get it done in 4 years and get it done in 2 years and pass this exam and all of these things. And now you're done and you're in the working world, and it isn't as time bound as you think. We put that on ourselves,
Yes.
I've managed people from all walks of life and all ages and it's I've never really felt I never really felt like we're too old or too advanced in their career to be where they were now. I feel like it's just, this is the time that they decided to step into any part of the sales career at any time you want. That makes sense. And I feel like we need to normalize people stepping in and out of sales at a time that matters for them, that we don't feel like we have to do it all at the same time right now. It's now or never, because that's not the case, and I feel like that's important for us to think about and breathe into.
I'm breathing it all in. No, I gotta say thank you. Like, thank you for dropping these gems. Because like as you're sharing, I'm sure this is like permeating the LinkedIn Live like stratosphere or whatever. But there's also, there's like me receiving these words and even thinking about how much pressure I put on myself to, like, it's like, yes, all right, I'm going to graduate college in 4 years. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get promoted at this time. And by this age, I'll have all these things figured out. And what can happen is like I remember a few years ago, I was like, I'm going to be like a 30 under 30. And now I'm 30 and I'm like, whatever. I was like making myself, I would get myself so wound up to the point of being like sick, like thinking that I had to have everything figured out. And so it's just such a gift to be like, you know what, I'm here in this moment. I have an opportunity, like, here are the objectives that I have for myself. Here are like the things that I really want to get better in. And like, here's the learning journey that I'm about to embark on. And instead of getting so tied up in, I need to accomplish this by this time, otherwise, who am I? It's more like, all right, let me just embrace the mystery that is like this career in sales and like what it's like, where it's going to take me. Ah, so good.
Yeah. Exactly. And no, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me to on this. I really appreciate. Think we're in an industry that's timeless. We provides the skills to build and sell and prosper at any age and at any stage. And so,
Mm,
I really appreciate all the time. I apologize for buffering issues for, our power
listen,
issues here.
we're
I'm
good.
happy to come back and talk with you at any time again. This has been really great.
Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say, listen, close us out on my own show. I'm here for it. Let's wrap it up. But no, Chantel, thank you so much for being here. I will 100% invite you back. What? Listen, at this point in time, we're gonna be friends. I'm gonna hit you up and slide into the LinkedIn DMs. I'm like, send me your cell phone. We're gonna be on a texting basis, okay?
Yes, please. I definitely want that. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Perfect. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone who's here for sharing, for asking questions. I know some folks, Tequila, she got vulnerable in the chat. So thank you so much to you, Chantel, again.
Yeah.
Appreciate you so much. And wishing you the best of luck in Texas.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. Have a great
All
one.
right.